So welcome everyone to, this is the fourth session of our Food for Thought speaker series. So welcome, thank you for coming. Today we're honored to have Professor Richard Greenwald, who's going to be discussing the role of arts in post-COVID, arts education in post-COVID US. And we're going to have, well, just a quick overview for instructions. If you want to raise your hand, you go in the drop at the bottom, there's a participants section, you click on it and you can press to raise your hand. So what we're going to do is Bill will do his introduction, then we'll move on to Professor Greenwald, who's going to do a summary of his paper, and then we'll have a Q&A session. If you please keep your mic on mute, and if you'd like to participate, just raise your hand using the participants tab. So I'll hand it over to Bill.
Thank you, Jeremy, and just kudos to Jeremy and Valerie who conceived of this concept, and we've been plodding along, and Georgia joined us and has been helping us a great deal with this, and she's been with me for the whole year. She's a SEPA grad and was my TA, and many moons ago, Richard was my student and TA too. So we all go back a long time together. Richard has had an incredibly distinguished career, largely working in public-private partnerships, from Philadelphia and the Transitional Work Corporation, which he built. He worked for Manhattan Institute, helping Cory Booker when he was a mayor, and he worked for one of our faculty now, Michael Nutter, who was mayor of Philadelphia, and in every case has been working across the sectors to make things happen. He's been on our faculty here at SEPA for more than a decade as well, so he finds time to join us and help us, like many of you are or will be, managing a family and managing a career and going to school at the same time. And it can be done, it has been done, and you'll be very happy when you finish. Richard currently is the president and CEO of the Soulsville Foundation, which hopefully he'll talk a little bit about just to introduce it, but it's one of these cross-sector partnerships that's located on the site of Stax Music, which I'm probably the only person old enough to really understand the significance of that. But if you've ever heard the song Respect Yourself, which is one of the greatest songs of all time, I'm not going to go through all the greatest hits of Stax, but that's one of the best songs that's ever written and performed. And that now Richard has his kids doing that song, and they're actually, I think, better than the original. So it's an incredible place that has a museum and a music academy and a charter school in a neighborhood that's not one of the best yet in its community, but the complex that he runs is helping to make it that way. So I'll let Richard take the floor and thank him to begin with for joining us at this very crucial time in our history. Thank you, Richard. Professor, go at it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bill, and I'm so glad to see everybody. You know, SEPA is a hugely important part of my life, and being in that MPA program with Bill Emick, you know, and the connections I made and the people that I still network with and are my friends, you know, have been invaluable. So I'm so glad I went there. I'm so glad to still be a part of it, and I'm always honored when I'm asked to do anything for the MPA program for Bill, because they've been so generous to me. It's funny that you brought up the Staples Singers, Bill. When I was interviewing for this role, I'm in Memphis right now on the Soulsville campus at the original site of Stax Records, and we'll talk more about that. I was in Philadelphia interviewing, you know, by Skype, you know, before we knew how to use Zoom, although obviously some of us still Zoom challenged. And at some point, you know, it was like the fourth round of interviews, and I had been down here and met folks. And at some point, this round of people at a table very seriously somebody asked me what my favorite Stax song was. And I brought up that Respect Yourself song, and then started, for some reason, Bill, I don't know, this is not advised. I started singing it. I don't recommend doing that in an interview. I'm sure it came off as very bizarre. Somehow they hired me anyway. Well, should I just get started, Bill? And
Yeah, please.
so, we have 50 minutes left, and so I expect maybe 15 or 20 minutes from me or longer, and then we do some Q&A kind of thing. Okay. So I'm going to share this PowerPoint unless you have it already.
No, that's good.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I can already see that it's not 12 a.m., but that's good. So, the challenge for me today, I have 3 screens. So if I look around, that's the point. That's the problem. Challenge for me today from Jeremy and Bill was to talk about the role of arts education and programs post-COVID-19. And in particular, the issue came up of, and how does it affect children in disadvantaged situations? And so we'll talk about that a little bit, and I imagine you'll have something to say about it when we get to the discussion part. I wanted to talk a little bit, pardon me, about arts education. Some of you may have a lot more expertise than I in arts education, but just in general, when we say arts education, we're not talking about necessarily studying art or studying the arts. We're talking about really learning the arts. So arts can be anything. It can be performance arts, it can be learning instruments, it can be visual arts, it can be production. But it's all about, when you're doing arts education, is learning the craft, learning the history of the craft, and seeing how it connects to other parts of your education. But there's evidence after evidence that shows that when children are exposed to arts education, that is a key element of a well-rounded education. And so they become, by far, healthier adults. They achieve better performance in school. And I think, most importantly, given the times we're in right now, have greater social tolerance. And there's evidence of that. In fact, if you look up there's lots of evidence. You could go anywhere and throw a dart. But if you look at the Houston Arts Alliance, which is a quasi-government organization in Houston, they did a big evaluations. And so in the MPA program, you're learning about these random controlled trials and these evaluations. There was one done in Houston with 10,000 folks. So usually it's a flip of the coin, or it's there's a control group and an experimental group. And what they found were, improvements in all areas of performance in school. But what was really interesting to me, of course, is, given our times, is the compassion that students who go through arts education have, and the tolerance they have for others. Why then, and this comes up all the time in our program, despite the evidence, in this case for arts education, why is there any argument about what should be funded? And starting from the federal level, where a lot of the money flows down to the states and to the locales, why would you make cards to arts education? And then the second question is, and this was the challenge from Bill and Jeremy, is, well, at this time, lots of people will raise, all of a sudden you'll see all the inequities in the world, around arts education, around education in general, around the justice system. So when there's a crisis, these things pop up and everybody is concerned and outraged, or many people are, but then nothing happens. And so one of the things that I was trying to get at in this paper is, what could we do differently to change structures so that this time that we can really use this crisis for good intentions, reset priorities, really get leadership at every level, and the work gets done, as you know, at the local level. And then what can practitioners do, and which is what many of you will become or will go in and out of during your career, or you already have. What can we do to make a difference? Often we're just complaining and throwing rocks and making demands, but we're really not doing our bit, which is to really honestly look into our programs, evaluate our programs, share what's true about our programs and what's still a struggle, and collaborate where appropriate, not necessarily partner with your competitors, but where you can collaborate with them, aggregate data, advocate for what works. So there's lots of lessons of arts organizations thinking about that. How can they come together to advocate? If you have been in my nonprofit management class or somebody else's nonprofit management class, one of the things that we'll talk about is the reason you have a nonprofit status from the IRS is that you are not only providing a service that's not going to be taxed, but that you also have an obligation to share what you've learned to ensure that our public policy is well informed and that we do things to make things better between that gap of government and private funding. So you absolutely should advocate and you absolutely should lobby where appropriate on legislation where you have evidence that something will make a difference and will work. So when you're a board member down the road or you're running a nonprofit, you are allowed to advocate, you are allowed to lobby with a certain percentage of your funding. Don't let people tell you otherwise, even your lawyers. Lawyers often will tell you not to do things that you should be doing. I wanted to just highlight 3 examples of, and then talk about the Soulsville Foundation. In New York, and if you look in the New York Times about a month or 2 ago, there was a nice story about the New York cultural institutions coming together, they were having daily calls during the crisis, and I'm sure they meet routinely. That's so powerful, as you can imagine, to have your own advocate group in your industry. And arts institutions and culture institutions sometimes aren't that good at doing that. But New York has set a good example for the rest of the country. Obviously, the Houston Arts Alliance, something we just talked about. And in Arts Memphis, there's a group called Arts Memphis that's outstanding. And there is a dearth of government support for the arts. And let me just say, there is no place in the world that's had more influence in the art of music in the United States than Memphis. I mean, you could argue, I guess, New Orleans and New York for sure, but Memphis bases its brand on what happened here in the 20th century, among blues musicians, rock musicians, and soul musicians. And yet, in the local city government and county government, and there are 2 governments, another story, there's no arts leader. There's no arts organization. Arts Memphis fills the gap, and they coordinate the cultural organizations here in Memphis. And so that was a brief history of that kind of stuff. And I want to tell you about our organization, the Soulsville Foundation. It is, I've done a lot of things. It's the most interesting place I've ever been a part of. So I really do want you to take a moment and go look at Stax Records, and I'll walk you through it a little bit. Stax Records was hugely important because I have, let me just pause, Bill. Bill knows I have 4 children, and when we were all locked down, calls are coming in and things are coming across screens and interrupting every Zoom call I had. And now the car dealership just interrupted me and I couldn't turn it off. But at Stax Records, I would say 2 things are hugely important here, or 3 at least. One is the music. So if you haven't heard of the Staple Singers, if you hadn't heard of Isaac Hayes or Otis Redding or Sam and Dave or Booker T and the MGs, you have heard their music if you listen to hip hop at all. So if you're not interested in soul music, it's immeasurable how much the influence of Stax Records out of Memphis had on hip hop and current music in our society. As much or more, I would argue, as Sun Records, where Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins were all from. So it was all right here. It's all like within this few miles of here. And then of course downtown is Beale Street, which is just a minute from here. So so I thought, Bill, we could skip it because maybe I'm technologically challenged, but I thought I might show a short video about what we do here at Soulsville and then walk us through. It's a few minutes long. Would that be helpful?
I think that'd be great.
Sorry, I was muted. Give it a
Okay.
shot. Maybe Jeremy can help us.
Okay.
Is it in your PowerPoint? Oh,
Are you seeing that?
I'm seeing you now. Your PowerPoint went away, so that's some progress.
So we're gonna do. All right. This, don't hang in there, guys. This is not one of the things we talk about at at the EMPA program is to be prepared for these presentations, and I try to be. All right, you should see this.
Yep. All right.
Okay,
Hopeful.
here we go.
No sound, Richard. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's me.
No sound.
Sound.
No
Richard.
sound?
No
I
sound.
think when you share this screen, there's a little tick box for share sound also, share audio. You might have to stop sharing and then replay it with the tick box that says share audio.
Okay, so on screen share, sorry guys. Hit screen share.
It's okay, we're all in Zoom school now. Zoom University.
Okay, now I've got the share, and then there's a box to hit.
It should say also share audio as part of the share screen.
Look under view options, maybe.
It's when you select your the screen that you want to share at the bottom, it'll say share computer sound.
Okay, we'll do it one last time, and then I'll quit, and I'll just tell you where to go find it, because I didn't
No,
see
we
that.
never-
So
You never quit, you're doing good.
all right. So I'm clicking on here, share computer sound. You're right. Optimize screen. I assume that's important. Now it's asking for my password. Sorry, guys. I thought this was, I tested it and I didn't realize all this happens.
All right, got it. Now, can you bring it back to the beginning?
Provide us with.
Stax Records.
Got it.
Tina?
It's one of the most important
Yep.
stories in American history. But the past is just a part of what the Stax Museum celebrates.
Much more than just a museum, the Stax Museum of American Soul Music is one entity of the Soulsville Foundation. And outside the museum walls on the Soulsville campus, you'll find the Stax Music Academy and the Soulsville Charter School, where that legacy of giving people a chance is embedded in the programs we offer young people from all walks of life every day.
Not only do they provide us with opportunities to be musically involved, but they make sure that we are academically prepared after we leave this school.
I tell them to be like a sponge, absorb as much of the educational part of it, as much of just the musical part of it as you can.
This is like a once-in-a-lifetime school that you can get to go to.
They will still push you to do your best and not fall off the tracks.
They'll really prepare you for life. It's like you got a little extra trick up your sleeve. It just gives me like more ideas, and it broadens my horizon of music.
Because it's the family at the Stax Music Academy, and it's all about family and friendships, also at the Soulsville Charter School.
Being in the Stax Music Academy has helped me become the leader that I know I can be.
An after-school summer music and youth development program like no other in the world. The Stax Music Academy provides
that was Sam and Dave before. That's Kirk
be
Whalum.
immersed in the unique legacy of Stax Records. Every year, the Soulsville Foundation provides more than 300 of these students intensive lessons in music, creativity, leadership, and life skills.
I'm a little bit jealous, to be honest with you, because I didn't get the musical education that these kids are getting now. And when they come out, man, they are schooled.
They perform the iconic music created in the 1960s and 70s in front of thousands of people in venues from Memphis to London, Germany, Italy, Australia, England, France, and other locations.
Going to Berlin, Germany to sing for people that don't even understand our language but understand the music that we're singing. I'm speaking to these people saying, hello, how you doing? And they're like, what are you saying? But when I'm singing, hold on, I'm coming, they're singing right along with me.
Founded in 2005, the Soulsville Charter School is our academically focused, musically rich college prep school, today serving more than 700 middle and high school students each year. Named one of the best schools in Tennessee, it has helped to mold the lives of future musicians, teachers, engineers, and bankers. Since the school began having graduating classes in 2011, every senior enrolled has been accepted to college or another path to post-high school education.
When we realize as creative people that what we do changes the mindset of many people in many positive ways, it's a responsibility to give back, but it's also a responsibility to support the young people that will be the leaders in giving back.
These incredible programs come with a promise to change the lives of the children who participate. They also come with a cost. The Soulsville Foundation depends on your help to support these children and keep the Stax legacy alive. Donations, big and small, are used to make sure we will always know the impact of Stax legends like Otis Redding, Isaac Hayes, and Carla Thomas.
This is an amazing, amazing opportunity that's coming to life in this facility.
To coin a phrase, the bar has been raised. Just keep up the great work.
Just keep doing your thing because you're getting better and better. Hold on tight.
Be part of the future. Join the Stax family. Donate today to keep the music and the magic alive through the Stax Museum of American Soul Music, Stax Music Academy, and the Soulsville Charter School.
When I come through those doors, it's like a fresh air that just goes past my face. I'm just like, this is gonna be a great day. I'm gonna learn new things. I'm gonna help others so they can become the best that they can be.
So, Jeremy, you took over my screen, it looks like, right?
Yes.
Did you?
Sorry. Do you want me to?
So do we want to go back to the PowerPoint? Or do I need to do that?
You should have your, you should have yours.
Okay. All right, guys, thanks for sitting through that. But I think it's good to see a visual of what's going on this campus. But I want to talk about post-COVID too. We'll get to it. So hopefully you're seeing the PowerPoint again.
Yes, Professor, we see a PowerPoint.
So well, I just quickly will summarize Stax. There's three things. It's kind of confusing, and we run this.
Professor, if you can enter presentation mode, we'd be able to see it better.
How is, where is that on the U slideshow?
On the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little screen graphic next to the one that has 4 squares, the one next to it, on the very bottom.
Go back, you're almost there.
Looks like a little podium.
Yep, to the right, to the right of the 4 little squares on the very bottom right.
Yes, I don't see what you're saying.
It's on your PowerPoint slide. At the bottom of the PowerPoint.
It says notes, comments, and then 3 little buttons. I'm told if you hit F5, it will enter presentation mode.
Is that it?
You have to share your screen.
At the top.
Now you see it, right?
Yes.
And there we go.
Now hit F5.
I think what happens is when I go into this full view, that makes a problem. All right, so you see this, right?
Not yet. Just talk to the PowerPoint.
I will. Okay. So this hasn't happened to me yet. I don't know what's going on. I've obviously clicked something, so you don't see anything now.
We do see your PowerPoint now.
Okay, it's just not full screen. I'm not going to hit full screen, so I think that's been the problem.
It's not in presentation mode, but it looks fine. You can continue.
Yeah, just click on each.
I'm done with that. Yeah. All right. So look, we went through Soulsville. It's very interesting. I run the Soulsville Foundation. We operate that Stax Museum of American Soul Music. So there's 60,000 visitors a year come to our museum, and I'll tell you about what we're doing in terms of post-COVID. We also do a lot of arts education there. So we've had over 7,000 Shelby County School children come to our museum this year. We do a lot of curriculum development around big things like Black History Month. And civil rights and other things. And so it's both a place where tourists come, so it's kind of an attraction like Graceland and other places, but it's really a museum where scholars come. There's a lot of research and there's a lot of dedicated work towards children and youth and arts education. Then we have an after-school program here called the Stax Music Academy. So you saw several of those kids in the video talk both about the school and the music academy. One of those kids, if you look up online, the Ellen DeGeneres show, she had a primetime holiday special last December. We were on it. The kid who got $50,000 was in that video you just saw. He was 2 years younger. And they were amazing. It was an amazing experience for us to go out there. Plus she made a great donation to our program. So it's an after school program. It focuses on music education, focuses on music theory. It's very serious about learning your instrument or production or engineering or vocals. But it's also, performance and production and a lot of mental wellness stuff that we put into that program. I still have everybody, right?
Yep.
Okay. Really, I lost your gallery.
No, you're doing fine.
And then the charter. Okay, and then the charter school is 6th to 12th grade, and it's one of the better schools in Tennessee. But of course, kids who come to us, but of course, but if you know a lot about education in many big cities across the country, we're a mid-sized city. The public education system struggle, and kids who come to us in the 6th grade are often 2 years behind. But when they graduate, every kid has a pathway either towards college or some other post-secondary pathway that's organized and constructed. We can talk about it more. But as I'm looking at the time, one of the we'll go through this pretty quickly. One of the things that we've been dealing with, of course, like everybody else, is so now what? So we're having the best year we've ever had. Our fiscal year ends, at the end of this month, until March, in every way, and in terms of all the outcomes for the Music Academy, for the museum, in terms of revenue, earned revenue, in terms of money that we developed. And then we got knocked down pretty quickly. However, we were prepared for it. We'll talk a little bit about what we did to prepare. But once we got into it, arts education programs had to ask themselves questions like we were asking ourselves. What's next? So we are still struggling. There's no information out there. It's no secret that our federal government is not syncing with our state governments, which are not syncing with our local governments in terms of advising us around public health matters. And it's very confusing for all of us out in the field. So Memphis was in phase 2, about to go to phase 3. Now there's all this talk about going back to phase 1 because the COVID numbers here are spiking across the South and the West. And the Shelby County school system, you know, is very important to us because we're running a charter school. So we have to be, by law, we have to be in sync with them, but also because, you know, all the people who work here have kids either in some kind of school system. So many of them do. So they still can't give us advice on what's going to happen in the fall. So we need to ask questions about, well, what are we going to do about things we can control? And so we have really been thinking about what can we do in the museum? What can we do virtually? What can we do as a hybrid? How can we still just not sit here and just do nothing while Rome burns? And so we are focusing on what we can control and trying to be realistic with our staff. Yes, we got the PPP funding. We have not laid off anybody or furloughed anybody on our staff, and our budget, which hopefully we approve tomorrow with our board, is written so that we still don't lay off anybody during the year, but we'll see how everything goes. So we are continuing to deliver services, working with others to see what they are doing, staying involved with those arts cultural organizations that I talked about earlier. So we are deeply plugged in with all the other youth programming in Memphis and all the other arts and cultural programs. And then we have just been nonstop. We anticipated, unlike a lot of youth development programs that just shut down when COVID hit, we were surveying our kids as it was about to happen in terms of their capacity at home, technologically speaking. And we addressed the gaps where we could. We immediately provided online programming, and we're in kids' homes. We developed core policies around how to go into kids' homes. So, you know, we have children here. They need to be kept safe. We have protocols when there are adults around children. When adults are going into your home via the internet, we have to be really careful that we've trained our staff on how to do that. We also have to train because we have a mental wellness component of what we do, we had to get permission from families in a new way when they weren't here so we could go into their homes. And so we just kept going. We kept doing normal programming. And now we're not trying to let this opportunity pass by. So we are thinking about if this is the future. You know, one of the things that we were preparing to do, for example, before COVID hit, was we were going to have a big soul-a-thon in March, and that soul-a-thon was going to be streamed, and we were talking to Facebook about helping us do that and hopefully getting a contribution from them. And we're going to have soul musicians around the world, but Memphis-based, sing and play all night long with our kids and have a big brunch fundraiser on a Saturday in the museum. We thought that was so clever to do something online like that. Now that's the new reality. So how are we going to take advantage of building in virtual experiences in our museum, in our schools, in our music academy is the question. And then taking lessons that we learn and sharing them with public officials so that we, you know, turn this into a positive. So I'm going to stop there, Bill. I apologize to everybody for my technology hiccups. I'd love to have a conversation with the time we have left.
Thank you, Professor Greenwald. If you have any questions, just go into participants and you can raise your hand and we'll call on you, put you on the screen. Okay, John.
Hi, thank you so much.
Hi,
thank you so much, Professor, and especially to Bill, Valerie, Jeremy, and Georgia for such a fantastic initiative. I want to welcome the other professors, also my fellow cohort. It's such an interesting thing, you know, one of the most important things about life is that everything you do is connected to and has a knock-on effect on everything else. And also I have a background in the arts, so a lot of this resonated with me. But for us, you know, who are presumably, most of us are going to become public service professionals, it kind of begs the question, all these great initiatives, like what do we need to kick them off? You know, if you think about it, you look at things like a funnel. In order, you know, to kick off a great arts program, which is going to have a knock-on effect on people's personal development and culture and world peace and all this great stuff, you need a few things. You need talents, which is there. You need potential, which you guys got students, and you also need money and you need time. And it just seems to me, with a lot of the initiatives I've tried to push back in New York, time is in short supply. Funding is there, but people don't have a minute to give. And you can still do a lot of stuff, but it's hard to collaborate. And so I think going forward, we need to, one of the things we learned from the pandemic is that we can be liberated from commuting, from traffic and wasting time in offices and pointless meetings, and become much more efficient. I think that's where we need to go forward, is how to create more time so that people can give things. And I'm focusing on technology and the technological revolution. So I know when robotics comes in, it can do all the hard work, that we can focus on the fantastic things like art. So I guess my general comments, and maybe it'll lead to a question for discussion, is around what's missing, what's needed to drive a great initiative like this forward. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, John.
I'll just say one thing. You know, one of the things you tick off a bunch of things. One thing I'd add is the economics of it all. So I'll add two things: the economics, and then what it means to actually be place-based. The economics of it all is, you know, getting people to understand that when you have 60,000 visitors come to your campus a year, mostly from out of town, when you have 120,000 other, if you multiplied the amount of children on our campus times the days of the year they're here, that's another 120,000 transactions happening on this campus. Other places have opened around us. Tom Shadyac, who you may know as a movie director, he opened up a climbing gym across the way. We're working with some other organizations and Best Buy to hopefully set up a teen tech center so we can teach robotics and programming on part of our campus, but we would collaborate with a bunch of other organizations, which is attracting a entrepreneur who has a video game that has songs in it. He's looking for original content. So all that those are economic drivers. And I think people forget what the arts can contribute to the economy of a community. The second thing I'll say is we've learned a lot about working from home. And I thought Bill's paper was really good on this topic. And it's a challenge for us to be creative around that. The other part of it, though, when you're working with children and teenagers, is they need us. So we shut down our museum for the next 6 months or 8 months because of COVID, and we can do all sorts of things in there to get our, you know, behind the museum stuff organized, to get our archives organized, to do scholarship, to renovate. It's harder for us to. We will continue to deliver our programming for our students, both in the school and the music academy, but particularly the music academy. If any of you had something really special to you in high school, that defines your, this is the first thing you think of when you think about high school. For a lot of our students, the music academy is it, and they need to be here, and they need to, it's part of it is being in a good, safe place, doing the things you care about. Not everybody appreciates the art, but here, I mean, you just walk around the halls, everybody is singing and playing music and being themselves and developing friends for life and getting supports they need for life. And so it pains me that we may not be physically open for people to come in here. So some of the stuff we can do by telecommute or virtually, but you have to be here. So those are my two comments that are really a powerful message that we just heard from John.
Thank you, Professor. I think we have Bill.
Yeah, just quickly, you really focused on it, Richard, and John did too. I mean, we're going to have to get serious about change first, and then also recognize that in-person activity is essential to being human. So, you know, maybe in terms of education planning, everybody should be planning on hybrid operation, period. We're going to be open. At least some people can come every day. Everything will also be on Zoom, and everything will also be recorded. And so everybody will have a chance at all content all the time. And we're going to operate like FedEx and all these other businesses. Activity is going to happen 7 days a week. But people maybe are only going to come in 3 days a week, right? There are ways to deal with this, but we got to be now, you know, visionary for once in our lifetime. We can't just say, oh, I can't wait till we go back to the way things used to be. We shouldn't, because this is not going to be the last pandemic, for God's sake. God knows what happens if someone lets off a dirty bomb somewhere, right? I mean, we're in a global world, and that's good and it's bad. And we just have to, you know, and I think people like you, Richard, I think you said it from the beginning, people who are not in government and people who are not on the sidelines, the people who are engaged but not necessarily the government, need to be starting this conversation. I'm not saying my way is right or the only way, but people have to start to say, we got to go back to some normal, but it's a different normal than before. But we're not going to stay in our apartments forever, for sure. And we're also not necessarily going to be able to just walk around blithely like this will never happen again. Not really a question, sort of a.
No, but you know, that's exactly, it's a motivating set of comments. And by the way, nice tip of the hat to FedEx, the biggest company in Memphis.
Yes, I know.
That was a good one. The, you know, for Soulsville, particularly the Music Academy and the museum, we're planning for exactly that. And certainly the school is too. So how can we have some hybrid? How can we, in many ways, improve our services? Because if you're coming in, say we have to separate our vocal component. So half of you are coming in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the other half are coming in Monday and Wednesdays. You still, though, the days you're not here, now we know how to broadcast. We're going to record everything, and you're going to be a part of everything. You're going to stream in. And so there's ways to integrate in. And so it's an opportunity for us to be creative, certainly, to your point. The second challenge we have to figure out as an organization and as a country is, okay, as we look at the budget for the school next year, we added in an extra amount of money that we don't have on substitutes, because we know that a lot of the teachers are going to get sick, and or their kids will get sick, or somebody in their family will get sick, and you need bodies in schools and after school programs to manage things. So we have to figure out too how we're going to work with our staff, our very thin staff, and if they have to be at home, how they're going to pop back in and lead things even when they're not here to play. So we don't have a choice, Bill. I think your comments are not just like, wouldn't it be great if we adjusted? There is no choice. We have to adjust. And I think what a lot of us will probably do is, it's so hard to do all this. It's so hard to figure out how to do all this virtual stuff so fast. It's been taxing. We're running down we're running on fumes. If we pandemic lifts, we go to phase 3 and we just sit back and go to regular programming, we'll have blown this.
I agree.
Thank you. So we have Laura Peluso.
Hi, I wanted to thank you for showing that video as an introduction. It was so much fun to see the kids' enthusiasm, and it made me think back to high school. And yeah, I'm a little jealous too. They look like they're having a great time and learning quite a bit. Like you said, walking down the halls, it must be fun to hear and see that. You touched a little bit on collaboration already, but you had mentioned collaboration in your introduction, and I was wondering if you found new ways of collaborating that are not only temporary to this period of time, but also innovative that you might continue because you found them to be so effective. And maybe this also, not only with the school, but also with the museum and the education there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good point, Laura. And it is fun to be around it's so much, it's just fun to be around the kids' energy. I am from Memphis, grew up in Memphis. My family's in Memphis, but I have lived, obviously we lived in New York for graduate school and afterwards. I lived in DC before that. Living in Philadelphia, going back and forth. So this is actually the first job I've ever really driven to. And when you pull into our parking lot, soul music is playing in our parking lot. And then when you come to my office, there's music all day long with the School of Music Academy. So it just is a pleasant environment to be in. We certainly have our stresses like every other organization. Internally, to answer your question on collaborations, we have been learning some lessons about how we can share, not just how other, you can imagine across the three entities, how we're sharing just safety precautions and how we can share staff. Some staff is helping with development that never did that kind of stuff before. Some staff is sharing on developing curriculum where we didn't share across entities before. So internally, we're learning how to collaborate better and be supportive. I don't have anything innovative externally we've done to collaborate, except for we've deepened our ties with all the other arts and cultural organizations in Memphis, as well as the youth development organizations as well. Those ties will lead to more innovations. And one of the things that I hope that this leads to is that we'll be able to have common definitions about things that we work on. So what does it mean to enroll a student into your program? What does it mean? What does success look like? What does an outcome look like? What does impact look like? And having common terms and definitions where most youth programs and even elite entities like ours don't really track that information. But if we have common definitions and then we aggregate together as organizations, then we'll have big numbers that we can share with policymakers and gives them a lot of policymakers and people with authority, they're scared to make decisions. They have limited resources and they have to pick priorities. When there is some kind of good data, best evidence, then it can give like an imprimatur to somebody to fund something.
Thank you. We have 4 more questions. Would you be amenable to staying just a few minutes past 1, or?
Yeah, I feel like I should be like in international soccer where you're in a penalty box for like laying on the field too long. I think all my technological mistakes, I owe it to the group. So I'm happy to stay as long as possible, as you need.
Now you're scoring. We're having great conversation. You don't want to leave.
We have Liz Mothrop.
Hi, I'm Liz. Thank you so much for your presentation. I also actually run an arts education nonprofit. It's an El Sistema inspired program, after school, weekends, summer programming. I'm a musician myself. And so I totally hear where you're coming from. I'm experiencing all the same things with the virtual programming and what that feels like. And a question for you, but it's really for our field, is how does your initiative impact the greater public education system? The programming that we fundraise for is fantastic and it's transformative and so important, and we have data that backs it up, but so often, as you said, arts is not funded by the schools. And how do we create systemic change so that we don't allow our efforts to be as accepted as a solution to the problem, and allow those in leadership to be complacent with the lack of arts funding and education that exists at a broader level outside of our programs?
Where is your program?
Patterson, New Jersey.
And what instrument do you play?
Violin.
Violin. So violin is not necessarily a COVID spraying instrument, but those, playing the horns is, and singing is, and it's a challenge. But I think to the core of your question was, what can we do to help public education system in general, and what can we share with them?
Yeah, how can our programs not be a Band-Aid and accepted as the solution?
Right. Well, one of the things is to integrate and ingratiate yourself with those programs. So for us, there's a little bit of fear of us because you do have to get into our program. Now, almost 75% of the children in our after-school program live in poverty and need a good after-school program, and we are open to them and we try to accept everybody we can. But there are requirements to be here, and even at the 6th grade level, you have to show some initiative and or have some skill. And we have some kids who come in here with amazing skill, but are raw. But one of the what that causes is some competition among the schools. They fear that, well, you're going to take all our best kids and they won't be here. You know, in the South, for example, football is a big deal, and the band playing at halftime is a big deal. And if the kids are enrolled in your program doing after-school music at your program, they're not going to be in our band. And so we've been really working to make sure schools know that we do not want to steal their kids. We want to complement what they're doing in their school, in their music programs. And so that has been one of our focus message. How can we complement what's going on in the schools? Second is we're trying to figure out how we can be mobile, so you don't have to come to South Memphis. There's no transportation that's, you know, reasonable in Memphis and in most cities in the United States, unlike the East Coast. So we're trying to figure out how we can be mobile, including how we can be mobile in the juvenile justice system and go behind bars there. Another thing we're doing is right now during COVID, and you can look online, or I can share some stuff with Jeremy, but we did a songwriting challenge. Certainly in our program, we did a songwriting challenge. And then after the Floyd killing, we put out a songwriting challenge to the whole city and to any kid. You don't have to be in our program. Any kid in middle school or upper school who wants to participate, create a mashup song or create an original song. We're doing a songwriting contest right now. It's kind of as a healing thing in our community. And in fact, you saw Steve Cropper play guitar and say, you know, I wish I had a program like this when I was growing up. Steve Cropper is one of the most famous guitar players in the world. He was part of Booking the MGs. If you saw the Blues Brothers movie, which none of you saw, except Bill maybe, he's in that. And he made a donation as to help give a prize for this songwriting contest that's going around in the community right now. So having a Stax legend from 50 years ago promote new music based on, you know, the Stax style is a way to show community that we can complement what goes on. And we know that, you know, people need these programs. So those are a few ways we're trying to do it.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a couple more questions. Let's take John. John Hang.
Hi, I'm Jian Han. I just curious about like how make your your foundation or like the school your like the funding. Like I just curious about like how those funding coming from like to operate such a big amount of like a student, and how this model can make a successful how to make a success model like to make other people to follow. So I'm curious, like any challenge you're facing, like to run this foundation as well. So.
Yeah, good questions. And we, you know, our name is, we're so confusing because this neighborhood in South Memphis is called Soulsville, down the street from Funky Town. No, it's called Soulsville. And if you know Motown, they're called Hitsville, USA. So we were called Soulsville, USA. And then the neighborhood adopted the term Soulsville, which we try to protect. And so we're not really a foundation, but we are the operating organization that runs these other programs. And then so two of the programs are called the Stax Museum of American Soul and Music and the Stax Music Academy. And then the charter school is called the Soulsville Charter School, like the Ohio State University. And so that's just confusing alone, but we are not a foundation. We don't have an endowment. We don't have, you know, one big funder that provides us a ton of money. So every day, every year, we have to re-raise the money we need to operate all year long. We have about 6 months of reserves. I wish we had a year of reserves. I wish we had a little bit of an endowment. We have $34 million in assets. So that includes a 7-acre campus we have here and the buildings that we own. And includes some of the valuable possessions in the museum. We also bought another campus just a 1/10 of a mile from here where there's a K through 6th grade going on. We own that campus and the building, we renovated, but we have another charter school in there that's we're trying to get to know families from kindergarten on. So we have to raise that money every year. For the school, because it's a charter school, it costs, that budget is around $7 million a year, and maybe 6 of it comes from the Shelby County school system. And then we raise the rest per student. For the Music Academy and the foundation, the budget is around $3.1 million. In a perfect year, half of it we would raise by selling t-shirts and stuff in our gift shop and through admission sales to our museum. We also raise money through performances, and the rest is out there fundraising every day. So it's all about, you know, individual donations, corporate. Liz knows exactly what I'm talking about, you know, going after grants, et cetera, and having a plan for the year to do that. So we have to raise $10 million a year, basically every year. 6 of it, we know it's going to come from the Shelby County school system, but the rest we have to raise, and we do it. It's right now, I got to say, in COVID, and maybe Liz and others who are going through this, our operating costs are going to go down by $200,000. We just finished a strategic plan where we're going to add staff because we don't have enough administrative support here. We don't have enough in development. We don't have enough in communications or HR or finance. Now we're not going to add anybody. And we had 2 positions that were open that we're not going to fill. So we're going to do all this and all this development with just me and, you know, a junior development person and, you know, the rest of the staff pull in. So that's how our finances work. And that's how we raise the money every year. And it's a battle, my man, it's a battle. If you have some money you want to donate, click the screen at the bottom. Donate now.
So next we have Adela, Professor Gondik.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy.
Hi.
Yes, I can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yes, I just had a question more on the management side because one of your recommendations was that we go to the cabinet level with this. And although I think that's a good idea, and we do have NSF grants are coupled with culture and arts grants now to an extent, but I'm just wondering sort of about the spirit of the law. The law usually doesn't like too much imagination, you know, like transportation, don't go too fast, and you know, science, let's not turn people into GMOs. But in the arts, it seems like imagination is it. And we know that, you know, a lot of imagination has been put down by culture. Like Sigmund Freud despised the waltz. He thought it was the most, you know, lascivious dance he had ever seen. And Isadora Duncan, the mother of modern dance, was booed, you know, from the stage because she was so sensuous. And even rap nowadays is like often felt to be, oh, we don't want to go there because it says dirty things about, you know, sex or something like that. People who are, you know, reluctant to have that kind of verbalization. So I'm just wondering, like, what would the government be doing with all of those creative ventures that we, you know, who are maybe very imaginative or like imagination? You know, what would be the role of government in relation to the art? It might be a little scary.
Yeah, I hear your point. And let me just add to that list of innovators in the arts. I would add, if you want to know the epitome of, this is me talking, not the experts here at Stax, the epitome of music that came out of Stax. There's a 1968 album called Hot Buttered Soul by Isaac Hayes. And I would challenge you to, if you're, you know, you're sequestered, whoever you're sequestered with, open up a ball and wand and listen to that album fully. It's an amazing album. What's interesting is it's the first, you know, for African Americans in particular in this country, they were only putting out songs, 3 to 4 minute long songs. And that was the barrier that broke. We're going to put out an album and it's going to be a really creative album with really long songs. And so it's, you know, just something I will leave you with as something fun for you to go listen to after this if you don't know that album. My point, though, Professor, was not to have government get involved in editing the arts, or editing is not the word I'm looking for. What's it called when you
censor?
Censor. Thank you. Censoring arts or anything like that. My point was arts education in particular is hugely important. And if you are going to raise the next generation of civic participants who have empathy and understanding for each other and are better in all phases of their education, then arts education is hugely important. You need to elevate it somehow as part of whatever priority you have in your government. And that was my point.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one more question. John Souza.
And John, before you go, I just want to say on that last point, there's no city in the world that, promotes like office building as the essence of who they are. But a city like Memphis or a city like New Orleans, and certainly the arts in New York City, they're always, city's going to promote the arts as an economic attraction for people to come to their city, to thrive in their city. They all want to be creative spaces and attract people your age to come to the city. So that's another reason to elevate arts education. But sorry to interrupt your question. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Good to see you, Professor.
Oh, hey, good to see you.
Good to see you, Professor Emick, Professor Gunn. I'm so happy to be here because it really tied in with my experience at SEPA with how you connect art, specifically with social issues, and how do you speak to public change, like how Liz was speaking about. What my question is, specifically thinking about an educator, how post-COVID, how do you move forward with your curriculum, with your methods of pedagogy? Because what I'm thinking about is the stakeholders as well as the students and families that are being served, and how arts can kind of be used as an initiative to attach itself to things such as equity. Before they would talk about culturally relevant programming or combating mental health stigma, and now it's going to be a whole new set of social issues that need to be dealt with. And I'm wondering what your planning is ahead of time, if you have any ideas of what these new initiatives might be, how it could affect the curriculum moving forward, either to, address post-COVID. Now, instead of just mental wellness, we need to speak about hygiene. As far as civil unrest, how you speak about connecting, Black history in a way that is also addressing the civil unrest that's happening now. So that's my question.
Yeah, it's a lot there. So, and I'd love to hear what you're doing, John. It's nice to see you again. A couple of things I'll say is, one, as we talked about this earlier on, is, we're learning a lot about delivering services virtually. And so we are tracking that, and we're creating the curricula around, we're not throwing away what we're learning. And so this is going to be a permanent part of what we do. In terms of the Black experience, the whole point of Soulsville is to preserve the legacy of Stax Records, which is really preserving, this was a place that was doing social corporate responsibility before that was even a term. This was a place that was giving kids opportunity. This was creating an art form that was really like an original African-American art form. So preserving that legacy through every day what we do, and teaching, this is really teaching kids about this history. The museum is the Black music museum in this country, as far as I'm concerned. So that's all integrated into what we do. We have findings, history in yourself. That's not the term, but you know what I'm talking, that program. We have that in the museum. We have it in the school. We teach the legacy. We teach people about the music, and that song that Bill brought up in the beginning of this conversation. We'll dissect that song and try to talk to kids about, where's this? Why did the Staple Singers write the song? What kind of impact did it have? We coordinate with the National Civil Rights Museum, which is just right up the street. And we do a program with them called Music in the Movement. And so that's how we have, in the past, have talked about Black experience in Memphis and music and in our country. Moving forward, we came together a few times as an organization, particularly the Music Academy, to talk about what else we could do. And so there's all sorts of ideas around, in every song that we teach, teaching the lessons of that song while people are learning that song. In every part of the curriculum, no matter what it is, not just, having African-American history courses, but really making sure that the books that we have and the literature that we teach and the science that we teach incorporates Black experience, American experience into what we do. So those are some of the ways that we are memorializing what we've learned in terms of delivering the program and delivering how we're going to keep kids safe, and figuring how we separate kids when they're performing. One of the things that we're going to emphasize this year is do more recording and engineering work. So we are working with a lawyer so we can figure out how we can copyright our published songs that kids write so they can have access to them and can own them. And we're also expanding the production capability so that you can do more of that during this time. Then you can go out and do performances, and which is a big part of what people see about us is they see us performing, and it's something we teach toward. But this year we'll have to adjust it. So those are some ways we're adjusting and talking about the social relevance of the times.
Could I know we're way over time, but since I know you two guys, and I ask for everybody's forbearance, but you know, in this time where we're pulling down statues all over, I think part of what would educate that whole thing is by educating all of us a little bit more clearly about what this country is. In fact, that the Constitution counted Black people as like 60% of a person, that all of the founders were slave owners. This is not to, we shouldn't, the idea to me is not to throw that away and say that didn't exist, but to honestly confront it and say, yes, they were, and yes, that's wrong. And how did that influence them? That doesn't mean that we don't want the Constitution, because the Constitution is what protects us. So I think this time should be one of the things where we as educators should really redouble our efforts to give people, like you were saying, let people understand what the words, Respect Yourself is a great song. It's a great song, even if you didn't know what the words are. But if you know what the words are, wow, that's why I still love it, right? So again, making our education a little bit more complete and not, you know, George Washington is the founder and he had wooden teeth. Let's stop there.
Yeah. I would add to that, we need a little courage. It's hard. It's hard to lead right now, Bill. And, you know, particularly, like, it's pretty obvious probably on this call that I'm a white male leading basically a Black organization. You know, the optics of that are whatever they are. So, but this is my job. And so how do I, you know, what are we doing here to make sure that, you know, we have succession planning in place, things we learned in the EMPA program, so that we're building up the next leaders in our organization? What are we doing with the money that we spend hiring vendors, outside vendors? And what am I doing to learn more about the people I work with, the people I serve, and when I get criticism, how I deal with that criticism? But it's really hard, Bill, and
yes,
it's hard to stay strong.
Yeah. So time for courage, time for leadership. We need new leaders for sure in this country. So hopefully people are out voting today, maybe for some new people.
And those statues, but
well, let's end on a positive note. If anybody saw the New York Times yesterday about the candidates for vice president, if you haven't, go look at it. It's a huge article, but I think you cannot come away from that article and not believe that the next vice president of the United States will be a Black woman. And that's big. That's big on 100 different levels. And on top of it, there are like 3 or 4 really strong people who could easily be president of the United States, and who would have, you know, so there's a lot of negative and stuff, but for me, who's an optimist by birth, it made me very optimistic and very happy and very proud, and that will definitely make a difference. If you look at who's running the country now and who's likely to be running the country in not too long from now, there are reasons for optimism. So,
great.
For what it's worth.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Professor Greenwald. It was an amazing session. And thank you everyone for your questions. And we hope to see you next week. We have Francisco Rivera Batiz talking about restarting global trade.
Excellent.
I just want to say how much I appreciate being asked to do this. I I know that this is also, you have a million things going on and you took an hour and a half to be on this call. So I have great appreciation for not only what you did today to be on part of this, but just being in the EMPA program is hard. As Bill said in the beginning of this call, you have so many other responsibilities. It's so impressive what you're doing. I'm so glad to be a part of it. And if you want to talk more about Stacks, just send me an email. Happy to talk to you about it.